A couple of weeks ago, I had to clear out my garage to sort of reorganise it and make room for the Bullet. One of many garage clean-outs that I've had over the last 3 or 4 years. There's a little job that I've been meaning to do on the Interceptor since I got it, and the materials that I need for that had sort of disappeared. I was hoping I'd come across them in this clear out, but unfortunately they didn't. In fact, I've not seen these particular materials for at least 3 years that I can remember. On receiving the Bullet, I realised that I was going to have to do some similar work on the Bullet as well, so it was obvious I was going to have to buy some more. Now, this particular material I've been using for decades, right since my body shop days. And I've come to sort of regard it as just one of those essential items that everyone has in the garage and everyone knows what to do with. It's an invaluable part of any biker's toolkit, or at least it should be. It has 101 uses. But when I had a look on YouTube to see what brands are available, because it's been at least 10 years since I last bought any, nothing really came up. Quite a few mountain biking videos featuring it, but they were all like cycle brands, and it sort of left me wondering if this was just one of those products that bikers used to use that have now been forgotten. And so I thought, right, I'm going to make a video about it. The product that I'm talking about was originally known as helicopter tape. Obviously, the rotors on helicopters spin very, very quickly. And on landing and takeoff, the aircraft itself kicks up a lot of dust and dirt. This collides with the leading edge of the blades on those rotors and gradually erodes them. And in the early days of helicoptering, they had to be replaced quite frequently, until some bright spark invented helicopter tape. It's basically a very tough, clear, self-adhesive film that was stuck to the leading edge of the blades to protect them from the damage caused by these tiny little micro collisions. So instead of having to replace the blades, as this tape became eroded itself, you simply peeled it off and replaced it, and the blades theoretically lasted a lot longer. Now, the automotive world realised how valuable this material is, I think back in the mid-1980s. And different manufacturers would start to actually use this stuff in the construction of cars to protect things like door thresholds from people's heels as they were getting in and out, and certain areas of the bodywork that they identified was particularly prone to stone chipping. Now, even back in the late 1990s, you could only really get this from body shop supply shops. But in these days of the World Wide Web, it's now freely available to all, and it's a really useful thing to have. Now, I've found that there's been some subtle changes. If you search for helicopter tape on the internet nowadays, you don't get an awful lot of results, and it's become more widely known as automotive bodywork protection film. Now, the quality of this stuff can be quite variable. There's a lot of Chinese companies have jumped on the bandwagon, and a lot of the stuff isn't worth buying. But I found this product from a company called E-Tech, which is a British company, although there's no guarantees that the actual product itself isn't sourced from China. And it is absolutely premium quality film. For slightly under £10, you get a roll of this stuff which is 3 metres long, which, believe me, is ample, and it's 12.5 centimetres wide. It's very flexible and it has a sort of gel-like quality to it, which is a good property to have for resisting abrasion. And obviously it's also fully weatherproof. Now, the flexibility part is important because it needs to be able to conform to contours on bodywork. So it has a slight stretchiness to it, which is ideal. And the price itself is quite good. I know I used to pay around about £10 for 2 metre lengths, and that's something like 25 years ago, so I was well pleased with the price. Now, this little kit comes with just about everything you need to attach it, apart from a pair of scissors. There's a flexible plastic applicator blade, which I'll come on to later on, and it also comes with a couple of alcohol wipes for cleaning the surfaces up before you actually apply the film. It also comes with a handy instruction sheet that tells you everything you need to know about actually fitting it. Now, there are dozens of areas on every motorcycle that are subject not just to stone chips, but also abrasion from the rider himself, abrasion from luggage attachments. And one thing that I always find really annoying is abrasion from the rider's seat where it touches the tank. This area tends to trap dust and grit, and over time it becomes like a sort of sandpaper. It wears through the paint, often right through to metal. And I remember an old Suzuki GT185 that I had as a lad where the tank actually rusted through at this point. And there's also areas about the frame. The obvious thing, of course, is the down tubes at the front that are subject to stone chips, etc. Soft luggage can also damage paintwork on the frame. Whether it's just through abrasion, i.e. dust and grit getting trapped between the straps and the frame and wearing the paint away, or chips caused by buckles and fasteners. All of this kind of damage not only makes your bike look bad, but it bites into the value of your bike and ultimately will shorten its life. And so a couple of hours with one of these kits and a pair of scissors will protect your bike for the future and provide you with peace of mind that you've done everything you can to make the bike last as long as possible. Now, on places like your frame, you just need small rectangular cutouts to protect certain areas, but other areas of the bike can be a little bit more complicated. Having said that, if done well, it can be virtually invisible. It just requires a little bit of thought, preparation and care. I'll quickly show you. Now, you can, if you want, cut the film so that it's larger than the surface area that you're trying to cover. A sort of a belt and braces job just to make sure. But if you study the way that your seat moves when pressure's put on it, you often find that it's not the outer side edge of the seat that actually touches the paintwork. I like to make the job as invisible as I possibly can. So on jobs like this on the tank, I make the patch of film as small as possible so that it covers the areas of the tank that the seat touches and no more. The first thing to do is to thoroughly clean the area where you're going to affix this film. By all means use the alcohol swabs that come with the kit, but there are only 2 of them and they are only small. You need to remove all traces of grease, wax and oil. And although those alcohol swabs will do that, I prefer to use U-POL System 20 degreaser. It's naphtha based, so it won't cause any damage to automotive finishes. This is the stuff that professional refinishers use to prepare car paintwork before repainting. It's also great for removing tar spots, getting chain lube off your back wheels and tyres. It's got 101 uses in the biker's garage. A gallon is, I think, round about a £20 mark. I'll have a look and see if I can find a link on Amazon. It does come in smaller 1 litre tins, but the gallon tin is the most economical and it will literally last you for years. Thoroughly clean the area that you're going to put your film patch on and then replace your seat. Then take a low tack masking tape and start to mark out the area where the seat touches. Don't slide the tape underneath the part where the seat touches. You need to be just a couple of millimeters above where the seat actually touches the tank. And this will give you a visual indicator on your tank to indicate exactly where the patch needs to go. Because for a neat, professional looking, tidy install, you don't want any more of the patch showing than you strictly need to. Now, feel free to make a better job of marking it out than I did here. Obviously, I used to do this as part of a profession, so I've sort of got my eye in as to how things need to be. Just take your time with it, and it's worth mentioning that on one of these rolls there's enough to make 30 mistakes doing this if you cut it wrong. So just take your time and enjoy the job. You should end up with a sort of on-tank template that looks something like this. And basically the inner edges of that masking tape mark the outer edges of your patch. Now, the next thing that you need to do is mark out your patch on your roll, just to assess how big your patch needs to be. And a simple way of doing it is just to use the end of your seat as a template and roughly draw around it. You will usually find that the pattern that you draw out is going to be far bigger than will be required to fit within that template you've made on the tank. But you need to start somewhere, and this is the best place to start. And once you've got that patch cut out, offer it up to the tank and see where it fits in relation to that template that you made. And from there, it's simply a job of trimming it down with the scissors until you've got a patch that fits within that template. Just trim a little bit off at a time and keep offering it up until you finally whittle it down to the dimensions that you're looking for. Now, a tip that I can give you here is avoid long, sharp, angular cuts. They do tend to stick out like a sore thumb with this stuff. You want this to be as invisible as possible, and the human eye is really good at picking up straight lines. It's not quite so good at recognising curves. And the other thing to look out for is at the bottom of the tank where the seam welding is. This is an area that the film might not stick to quite so well, so cut it above that line so that you're only sticking the patch onto a smooth, flat surface. That way the patch will have maximum durability. Take your time over this bit, it's important to get it right, but like I said earlier, don't worry if you mess it up. You've got 3 meters of this stuff. And although you don't particularly want to waste it, it's not the end of the world if you make a couple of mistakes and have to start again. When you're finally happy with the size and shape of the patch that you prepared, it's now time to stick it in place. Now, you may have touched the paintwork with your fingers, in which case grease from your fingers will have come off, which may cause adhesion problems. So clean it again. Then peel away about the first ½ an inch of backing paper from the film and gently fold it over. Be careful not to touch the adhesive because it can leave fingerprints in it. On a job like this, it's always best to stick it from the bottom and work your way up. Line it up carefully and then put it in place where it needs to be. Now make sure that you've got your flexible spatula handy. And once you've attached the bottom, carefully start to peel off the backing paper bit by bit. And as you do so, using a reasonable amount of force, use that spatula to expel any air bubbles from the film as it goes onto the paintwork and firm it down good and proper. Work the spatula sort of from the middle out towards the edges to push any air bubbles out. Again, there's no rush, take your time with this. It's better to take your time and get the job right because you really only get one go with this film. If you try to pull it off, you'll wreck it and you'll have to start again. And when you pull the last of the backing paper away, make sure that you firm down the edges of that patch really well. Now, these spatulas are designed to be used on paintwork. They shouldn't scratch it, they're designed not to. Just make sure that it's clean when you're using it and never ever put it down on the ground. You don't want it picking up bits of grit and then damaging your paintwork. That just defeats the object. And obviously one of the advantages of using a masking tape template like this to work up to is that you're not really coming into contact with the paintwork much with the blade anyway. After application, the manufacturer recommends that you protect this area from water for up to 3 days. This is to give the adhesive time to set properly. So obviously it goes without saying you shouldn't wash the bike for at least 3 days after applying one of these patches. You can then go ahead and remove the masking tape template, and you've now protected your paintwork against abrasion from grit against your seat for years to come. I would avoid using any sort of wax or polish over it for 3 or 4 days, because you can't be entirely sure what the solvents in those products might do to this before the adhesive has had chance to set. Now, if you should want to remove it at a later date, gentle heat from a hairdryer will be enough to loosen up the adhesive so that you can gently peel it off. Now, from some angles, obviously you will be able to see the edges of this film, but other than that, to all intents and purposes, it is pretty much invisible. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate you taking the time, and by doing so helping to support this channel. I will leave a link in the video description down below, both for this film and for the pre-paint wipe for those that are interested. I do hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you do subscribe, please hit the notification bell so that you can be updated whenever I upload a new video. I will of course be back on Friday, so until then, if you're riding, please ride carefully, and I'll see you soon.